Look like we're all set. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sports Scope. I'm your host, Robert Butler, the most influential sports talk show in America. Even though I don't feel great, I always push that rock through, I pushed a rock through. I know we got some preseason football. I don't think I've ever watched a whole Hall of Fame game. I understand we're all thirsty for football, but usually the starters on these games do not even take a snap in this game. Your normal quarterbacks of the world. You've got second string don't play that much. This is their third and fourth string guys playing in this game. But it's good to see football back on, read box scores and everything, and maybe catch one or two throws on a highlight film. We are 5 weeks away from the real deal. 5 weeks from today, Dallas and Tampa will be playing. 4 weeks from today, and I'm going to talk Big Ten here in a little bit, Big Ten football, Ohio State will play at Minnesota. Minnesota has more than a puncher's chance to upset Ohio State. I'll get to that. And today's August 5th, my dad's birthday here. 65 years old. Hello, Dad. So anyways, but first, I remember back in, I want to say it was 2011. Peyton Manning, he was out of football for a year. He had a neck injury, very serious neck injury, missed the whole year. The Colts got the first overall pick that year. It was already with Jim Irsay. They already made the commitment. They were going to cut him. And it was, he was coming off that injury. It was emotional time and all that. And I remember thinking to myself, the Titans, I was reading in the paper that the Titans were interested through the owner, Bud Adams, at the time when he was living. He wanted the Tennessee Titans, even though they had drafted this Jake Locker, I want to say out of Washington or whatever, or take this guy, 30-something-year-old, coming off this injury, but we know he's a legend. We know about this guy's work ethic. And I remember thinking, well, I know that Tennessee got him to come in, but how long is he going to last? We know he's a sure thing, but we've got this young guy we're working with. And, looking back on that, of course, Tennessee should have brought in Peyton, do a better, because the coaching staff didn't want him there. I don't think Jeff Fisher at the time and the general manager at the time wanted Peyton Manning to come to Tennessee. But long story short, he goes to Denver. They're aggressive. Even though they went to the playoffs year before with Tim Tebow, he goes there. They get the 2 Super Bowls, and they get to win one, multiple, go deep in the playoffs every single year. I'd much rather have that situation. That makes me think about this situation with Deshaun Watson. There was a report yesterday that talks are from multiple NFL networks, reporters, are heating up between Deshaun Watson and the Philadelphia Eagles, the Texans and the Eagles for Deshaun Watson. And I'm thinking to myself, this is very similar. Watson's coming off of a legal situation, and they've got a young quarterback that they're trying to groove for their system. It makes me think about Jake Locker. Locker played a few years, and he retired, stayed hurt all the time. My dad called him the Hurt Locker. And I'm thinking this is going to be the same situation, Eagles fans, with you. If you're vowing to keep Jalen Hurts over Deshaun Watson, okay? Let's just get into the numbers before we get into the legal stuff, okay? Led the NFL in passing yards last year. I don't know if any of you even know that. Not Tom Brady, not Aaron Rodgers. He had the highest completion percentage, Deshaun Watson, in the NFL last year, with a coach who was also playing GM, a guy who was a maniac, out of his mind, almost getting into a fight with one of the fans and had to be held back by DeAndre Hopkins. That's why I'm comparing him to Joe Judge. And this guy still leads the league in passing. Very high completion. He has the highest completion percentage in the NFL this past year. And he said, well, Robert, he's in trouble. Okay. Let's talk about that. All right. He is, again, this is the NFL Network. Tom Prespero in Rappaport also says this. That's the source. The league has not, this has been going on for 4 months since these allegations came about. The NFL reporter, not my opinion, is saying the league has decided at this point they do not have enough evidence to even put him on the commissioner's exempt list. Okay? They do not have the evidence to put him on the commissioner's exempt list. All right? So, on top of all that, this guy did this with 23rd ranked offensive line. 23rd ranked offensive line. Remember 2 years ago, they had the Super Bowl champions down 24-0 in their own backyard. And of course, Kansas City came back. But you look at this legal stuff and talking about compensation. If I'm the general manager, like a John Elway, even though I had a young Tim Tebow, when you've got a guy like this, you're the immediate favorite in the NFC East. Okay? And you're looking at not just his stats and everything, but the Eagles have, again, to remind you, they have their first-round pick. They have Miami's first-round pick next year. They have a second round guaranteed from the Colts that could become a first round if Wentz comes and plays 70% to 75% of the snaps whether they make the playoffs or not. It's 75. 70 if they do, okay? There's still a chance that could be it. I would give all 3 of those picks for Deshaun Watson, And you're saying, what's the worst thing that can happen? Okay. The worst thing that can happen is somehow this complaint that's been filed back in April with the police department, and he gets indicted on that, and he gets convicted of that, and say it's some kind of sexual assault pickles. So you've lost 2 first-round picks in one draft, and you've lost, say 3 first-round picks in one draft. Okay? Well, again, I have to remind some of you, the Washington then Redskins traded 4 first-round picks for Robert Griffin III to move up to draft him. Okay? That same year, in the 4th round, they drafted Kirk Cousins. The Rams got all those draft picks, right? Well, you know what happened to the Rams, Pickles? You know what happened to the Rams? They end up firing their head coach. Then they got to the Super Bowl with the new coach. You know what happened to that Washington football team? They got to the playoffs the very next year with Robert Griffin. Then he tears his ACL, whatever. Kirk Cousins, their 4th round pick, is still playing in the league. You're not going to fall over and bleed to death if you give up 3 first-round picks for for a quarterback. So if it all falls through, if I'm Jeffrey Lurie, businessmen that are successful in this world, they think long game. They think 5 years from now, 10 years from now. You repatch your offensive line, and then you go out and get you a stopgap quarterback. And in 2023, you go out and get another quarterback. Because Jalen Hurts is not going to make it in this league. But if you make this move, and again, I say my opinion, if anything happens, Pickles, my opinion, he is suspended 6 to 8 games versus a 26-year-old highest completion percentage in the NFL quarterback who is better than Dak Prescott. That's what the numbers say, guys. Touchdown interception ratio, yardage. You get this guy on offensive line. By the way, last year, the Eagles had a better offensive line than the Texans, okay? And they had injuries out the yang. They had injuries. If I'm an Eagles fan, like my dad would say, you jump on this like a duck on a June bug. And happy birthday, Dad. All right? 856. But it's just the idea that we should start over and we need to groom our young quarterback. No, when you have a talent like a Peyton Manning, when you have a talent like a Tom Brady, when you have a talent in his prime, 26 Pickles, when you have a talent that's 26 years old, and you got an opportunity to snap, and I've said this, I got a feeling, Pickles, that Miami team is going to regret it. They had the firepower to do it. It could have already been done with. If Miami, with that defense, and the players they already signed through, which was one of them, was the wide receiver from Houston, Fuller. I can't remember his first name. I'm thinking about, Pickles. Fuller is with the Dolphins. If you put Deshaun Watson on that team, I may pick them over Buffalo. Because they won 10 games last year with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tua, who didn't even know how to call, was too afraid to call audibles. Yeah, they would win the East. But again, I'm giving you what the NFL Network is saying, not my opinion. And you say, well, maybe the commissioner has not read it in enough time to put Deshaun Watson on the air quote commissioner's exempt list, right? Wrong. I talked about this a few days ago, guys, that Joe, what's this guy's name? The cornerback for the I think his name is Joe Gladley. The cornerback for the Minnesota Vikings was indicted on domestic assault this past weekend. His girlfriend. He was cut by Minnesota. He's on the commissioner's exempt list. That was like a week ago. Like you said, Pickles, this is a civil suit versus a criminal suit. Criminal complaints have been filed back in May, folks. There's just not enough evidence there. When you have that opportunity, and if you're Houston, you got, 2 first rounds and a second, you could start your rebuild now. Give David Culley a fighting chance. The guy's not even practicing, with the team. I mean, it's still friction there. But, Cousins is in the playoffs. That was the guy they got in the 4th round. So the picks aren't, if you don't make the correct pick, they're just picks. They're simply just draft picks. Now, switching gears to a guy who did make draft picks work is Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson will be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I know Peyton Manning, Calvin Johnson, John Lynch, Alan Faneca, the guard for great guard for the Pittsburgh Steelers, will be in the Hall of Fame. And also, Adam Schefter is reporting Jerry Jones announced that Jimmy Johnson will be in the Cowboy Ring of Honor as well. And, I'll say this. This guy coached for, he only coached about 9 years in the NFL. Or may have coached just 9 years period as a head coach, if now that I'm thinking about it. 3 years with the Dolphins from 89 to 93 with the Cowboys. And won a Super Bowl there. Won a couple Super Bowls there. Won Coach of the Year in 1990, 1987, National Championship, 9-4 postseason record. Now, I want to read this trade he did. This guy made history. Jimmy Johnson made history. Looking back at the Herschel Walker trade to the Minnesota Vikings, the best trade in NFL history. And people thought it was crazy. In 1989, peak of NFL's career, Herschel Walker played 5 seasons for the Vikings for 6 draft picks. And part of those picks were Emmitt Smith, Russell Maryland, Kevin Smith, and Darren Woodson. The teeth of that defense. The absolute teeth of that defense. Darren Woodson selected to 5 Pro Bowls, named to 4 All-Pros, Cowboys all-time leading tackler. And Emmitt Smith was the NFL's leading rusher. The guy, and then on top of all that, he, Jerry Jones, he did say that he wanted to go back to Miami. He had enough. He's one of those guys, Jimmy Johnson, Pickles. He's like, kind of like Urban Meyer. When he goes into something, he goes as hard as he can go with everything he's got. Yeah, he goes as hard as he can go with everything he's got, Brian, and then he just completely crashes. He completely runs out of gas. That's just like Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer pushes himself till he gets a heart attack, and then that's it. Okay, I'm done. I'm done. Johnson said he slept in the office when he was with the Cowboys. It cost him his marriage. And he got tired of being micromanaged by Jerry Jones. So he said he could have worked it out. He was talking on Colin Cowherd's show the other day. But the guy is a first-generation college student like myself. He's a psych major. He was one of the most interesting coaches and great sayings. Let the mind control the body. Don't let the body control the mind. Now, he did take one from Vince Lombardi. He said, fatigue will make cowards of us all. But I'll say this about the guy. And another thing, people want to criticize him for being a failure at Miami. I looked this up too today, guys. He was in Miami 3 years, 3 wild card appearances with Miami. Went to the playoffs every single year. He finally admitted a few years later that Dan Marino, an aging Dan Marino at that time, did not want to be a power running team. That's what Johnson wanted to do. He said, I wanted to make us a power running team, and we're going to do like a 60-40, 70-30 split and let him throw off play action. He didn't want to fight with the legend and be considered the bad guy. But if Marino would have bought in, they could have potentially won a Super Bowl with the Dolphins. So, of course, then he steps down. And since 1999, the guy's been fishing and working for Fox Sports ever since. And a great storyteller. If I had to pick one coach to ever play for, if I had to pick one coach to ever play for, it would probably be Jimmy Johnson. And maybe Phil Jackson. He was also his Phil Jackson's brother was a psychologist, and he used some of those psych methods on the players there. But yeah, so he's going to be in there. I'm looking forward to listening to the guy's speech more than I'm looking forward to more than I am looking forward to the actual game, which I never did. I never did watch these Hall of Fame games, you know. But I just thought that was pretty interesting. Julius Randle signed an extension with the Knicks. Heads up there. Love it. I think he was worth it. In the regular season, they had a bad postseason, but they've gotten better. Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles signs a 3-year extension with Tampa. Now, I like Todd Bowles. I wasn't in love with him with the Jets. He never had a quarterback. That is true. I think he is kind of like Buddy Ryan, Rex Ryan. He's probably a defensive guy. He's probably not head coaching material, but their reports are now, there's speculation that he's going to take over for Arians after Arians retired. Yeah, and Brian says he watched first quarter for a taste. Yeah, you just want to see one lineup, one play, and then when you start getting to the third and the fourth stream in the preseason, man, it's just, you know, it just is what it is. But, guys, I got a lot to talk about tonight. Okay, Big Ten football. Speaking of Urban Meyer and everything, excuse me, I'm going to talk about this Ohio State team. Now, Ohio State, okay, here it is. Check this out. Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia are right there at the top of recruiting chains. For instance, they've got the number 1 class in 2022. Still got a ways to go. I get it. But Ryan Day's done a pretty good job here. They had the number 2 class in the country this past year, 2021 recruiting ranking. This is quarter 24/7. This is all of the sites together. It's like Real Clear Politics. It's all the polls together. So number 2 class this past year. Number 5 class in America in 2020. 19, they had 14th. They slipped 1 year. But most of it is top 5 recruiting for Ohio State. Now, this CJ Stroud is a redshirt freshman. I was actually going to pick Wisconsin, Brian. Wisconsin is Phil Steele's number 2 bounce back team behind Washington. However, this Stroud guy, they have 6 offensive, 5 defensive coming back. This CJ Stroud is a redshirt freshman. And I just mentioned to you the talent level that is at Ohio State. They have separated from a talent and depth standpoint way more than I would have ever imagined from Michigan and even Wisconsin. But I'm going to talk about Wisconsin here in a minute, Brian. Paul Chryst, I think that's his name, the head coach there. His recruiting has gradually gotten better every single year he's been there. But I do expect them to have a bounce back year too. I'll get to them in a minute. But Ryan Day, I was not really sold on him when he took over. I thought he was living off Urban Meyer's players. But I'll have to give credit where it's due. The guy continues to recruit at a high level. And I'll say this. I don't think – now, I got to go and look at Clemson's schedule. I've got, as far as today, I've got Oklahoma in the playoff. I've got Texas A&M winning the SEC in the playoff. Alabama loses early, but they get into the playoff. So that's 3. So how am I going to get that number 14? Is that going to be the Big Ten winner? Is that going to be the usual Clemson? Which I think they've got 9 players back on defense. Clemson always got a good defense. They still got that coordinator there. I haven't got to the ACC yet. But look at Ohio State's schedule with this redshirt freshman and only 5 defensive starters back. They start off on the road against a hot and upcoming PJ Fleck coach team with practically, I think they've got 20 of 22 starters back at Minnesota. They start off on a Thursday, 4 weeks from today, Brian, playing Minnesota Beavers. Remember, 2 years ago they went 11. I don't count last year. Last year was COVID. It was a disaster last year. But they play at Minnesota. Then they have Oregon, who also Mario Cristobal for Oregon, the head coach there, very good recruiter. We saw what Justin Herbert can do in the next league. Penei Sewell, top 10 pick, left tackle, went to the Detroit Lions. Okay, but Ohio State, they've got at Minnesota, then they play Oregon at home. I think they lose one of those games. If they win those games with this Ohio State, with this red shirt freshman quarterback, I think they can go undefeated. Their schedule's 47th nationally, according to Phil Steele. They got Minnesota at Minnesota. They may lose that. Oregon at home. Then their next tough game is at Indiana on the 23rd. That's off of a bye week. Then they got Penn State at home. Now, Penn State's got a big bounce back here. And then they play at Nebraska. They could lose that Nebraska game. I got a feeling this Martinez is going to give them all they can handle. You give them all they can handle and may knock them out. But then they've got Purdue, Michigan State, at Michigan. Big talent difference there with those teams. But I think they're going to lose one of them first two. They'll probably run the table. And I do think they're going to end up playing a much improved Wisconsin team. But my prediction is that they're going to go 11-1 in the regular season. And it's going to come down to whether they can beat Wisconsin, which I've got them playing Wisconsin, whether they can beat Wisconsin. Even if they do, can they pass a one-loss Clemson? I think Georgia ends up beating Clemson. Can they pass a one-loss? Can they pass a one-loss Alabama team? The committee's always going to, if Alabama's got one loss with all the professionals in there, with the SEC, even not in the SEC championship game, like a few years ago, they're going to put Alabama in there. Okay? They're going to put Alabama in there. Now, Clemson, that's different. Clemson coming in has a weak schedule. It's like 70th. But that's the preseason. We don't know what the teams are going to do once the season gets. You see what I'm getting at? So it's going to be close. But, we're a few years away from a 12-team playoffs. Hold on, guys. Let me switch out my – okay, I'm back now. Had to switch out my whatchamacallit there, folks. So it's – okay, so I think – Ohio State, the talent's there. They're going to lose in their first 2 weeks. And I think they'll run. They just don't have that difficult a schedule. Now, Penn State. Penn State, 9 offensive, 7 defensive. James Franklin, his teams don't put together 2 bad years in a row. They were 4-5 last year. COVID, I cut everybody some slack, okay? Now, they've got this Sean Clifford guy. He's a junior. But they have a really tough schedule at Wisconsin. I think they'll lose that Wisconsin game, Brian, to open up the season. They've got Auburn at home. I think they'll beat this Auburn team, but Auburn could beat them. They got to play at Iowa. Iowa, a team that puts out George Kittles of the world. Always a fundamentally sound team, not the biggest talent depth up there, but they're well coached under Kirk Ferentz. And then they play at Ohio State. I got Ohio State winning that game. And so they're a 2-loss team. I think they beat Michigan at home. I just don't have a lot of faith in this Michigan team. But that's James Franklin, you know. Penn State's recruiting classes this past year, 21st, 15th, and 20. They had the 6th ranked. Their seniors are from a 6th ranked class, and their 2019, that 12th ranked class with James Franklin. They're good on special teams every year, guys. I get it. But I'm looking forward to seeing Wisconsin play Penn State early. But Penn State, they're playing at Wisconsin, at Ohio State, at Michigan State, and at Iowa. I think they're probably a 2 to 3 loss team. Moving right along. Okay, Michigan. Now, I know what you guys are thinking, and I'm thinking the same thing. Could Harbaugh get fired even though they gave him an extension this past year? Well, Jeremy Pruitt from University of Tennessee. Tennessee won about 6 or 7 games in a regular season year before last. They give him an extension. He has a god-awful season. Team fell apart this past year, and the team fired him. Possibly that could happen. Jim Harbaugh now, he's moved off of his defensive coordinator, Don Brown. So they've got this Mike McDonald, no relation to Ronald, is the new defensive coordinator there. And then they've got the 3rd-year John Gaddis. I will say this Alan Bowman guy that Harbaugh's got the transfer from Texas Tech, I think this is the most talented quarterback that Jim Harbaugh's had since he's been at Michigan. His name is Alan Bowman. He is a transfer from Texas Tech. I liked what I saw on YouTube, him. But Michigan's schedule's even harder than Penn State's, okay? They got to play Western Michigan, but they got to play Washington. Phil Steele's #1 bounce-back team. That is in Michigan. But they got to play at Wisconsin, at Nebraska, at Michigan State, at Penn State, and, of course, they got to play Ohio State. They're a 3 to 4 loss team here. I mean, they've got 10 starters on offense, 7 on defense. The problem is they just haven't recruited as good as I thought they'd be able to recruit. Being Michigan, coming off COVID, everybody's down on money right now. I mentioned the other day that Michigan, with this NIL stuff, maybe hurt them in recruiting because anybody that plays for Michigan, their players can't take any endorsements for tobacco, adult entertainment, or gambling. Well, that's everything, you know, except for the adult entertainment stuff. You know, Harbaugh may take an NFL job next year. I know he wants to beat Michigan so bad he can taste it. It all comes down to, can this guy, John Gaddis, get everything out of Alan Bowman, even though Harbaugh's the former quarterback there? My point is, he's already moved off of 2 offensive coordinators since he's been there. This is year 7. I can't believe it's already year 7. And he's already moved off his defensive coordinator. Only other person to move off of is you, Jim Harbaugh. You know? So my feeling is that he's going to eventually get it right, but I don't know when. I don't know what the patience are because I think the administration knows this guy will do anything to win just about. But at some point, and that, he took a little bit of a pay cut. He's got a 4-year extension, by the way. He'll be there to 2025. He's really got to beat Ohio State and get to the playoff. Well, if they can make a major improvement offensively this year and get an upset or two on the road, maybe beat a Wisconsin or a Nebraska, somebody like that. Now they've got Ohio State at home. They've got more starters returning, but Ohio State's just got more talent, man. They just, if you guys look at some of the last time they played Ohio State, it was 56-27. Then the year before that, they put 62 on Michigan. That's just a speed difference. There's a depth difference there. And I was really surprised that, but my guess is I think they'll hold on to, if he can get out of here at 8-3, win their bowl game, have a nice recruiting class coming in. They did recruit 20. They recruited 13th this past year. In 2020, they were 20th. So the fact that he signed that extension, guys, is probably why that Michigan is being able to recruit better this past year. But if you're Michigan, who do you get? Do you get P.J. Fleck from Minnesota, the 40-year-old hot coach, 41-year-old rising star there? Do you get the next guy I'm going to talk about? Mr. Possible Comeback Kid. Greg Schiano. Greg Schiano is an rise to grace. The rise and fall of Greg Schiano. It's this year 2 and rise again for the Rutgers. I said I only talk about interesting storylines. Schiano, from 2001 to 2011, this guy won Coach of the Year in 2006. He coached guys like Ray Rice, really good player even before he, forget about the stuff with the wife. He coached Devin McCourty, New England Patriots. You may have heard of him. He's made a few Pro Bowls, I want to say. If he hadn't, he should have. Kenny Britt, NFL player. Mohamed Sanu, I'm sure you've heard of him. And so 2012, he takes a job at Tampa Bay. He doesn't work. He's too demanding. He doesn't have a feel for the NFL game. He had an incident, a fallout, words at the end of the game with what's this guy's name here? Tom Coughlin for hitting guys when they were taking a knee down. Send one of his defensive guys knocked over the center, and Coughlin blew up on him. And he just didn't go well with the players. They didn't have a quarterback. He was fired, okay? He comes to Ohio State, fills in as a defensive coordinator. Then he is hired at Tennessee to be the coach for a day. And then some rumors about his past as an assistant with Penn State come out that he did not tell on Jerry Sandusky, the guy that was convicted of child molestation. So there is a scrimmage there. There's some legal ramifications. Tennessee rescinds the contract. He goes back to Ohio State. Then Rutgers, meanwhile, go back to being bottom feeders. 1-11, 2-10, 4. This is without Greg Schiano. So now Greg comes back to Rutgers, and he's recruiting really well. He's got the 14th ranked class in the country coming into next year. He's on the comeback trail. He won 3 games when that COVID season. He won 3 games in a COVID season last year. with one of the worst rosters in the entire Big Ten. So this could be a great rise, fall, rise back to great story. Schiano's not that bad a coach. I've watched him. I watched Ray Rice. I remember that team. Went 11-2. Kenny Britt, Devin McCourty, Ray Rice. These guys are pretty good, you know. But he's only 55. Guys, I'm 40, you know. 55 is not that old. I mean, I can't drive 55, but I can see being 55. You know what I'm saying? As an age. So anyways, looking for storylines here. Okay, now Wisconsin. Wisconsin, Brian, they got 9 offensive, 8 defensive starters coming back. This is Paul Chryst's 7th year. He may be better than Brett Bielema. Yeah, I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. He may be better than Barry Alvarez, the guy that really got Wisconsin on the national scene, in my opinion. He's recruited since 2018. Wisconsin's class was 47th nationally. 2019, it was 29th. 2020, it was 26th. This past year, Brian, it was 16th. Okay. Wisconsin's had guys like J.J. Watt, James White, numerous offensive linemen come out of there. And now they've got this Graham Mertz, redshirt freshman coming in at quarterback. I think they're going to play well this year. I think that, again, this is one of Phil Steele's bounce-back teams. I think they beat Penn State opening week. They play Notre Dame on the 25th of September in Chicago. I think they win that one. They got Michigan at home the next week. Now, Michigan could beat them because they're playing Notre Dame but the week before that. But this is at home. And then they got to play, guys, they got to play at Purdue. Purdue's kind of taking a step back. At Rutgers, I talked to you about Rutgers, Nebraska, and then they ended at Minnesota. So I think potentially, and then, of course, they've got Iowa at home. They don't have any tough road games other than Minnesota and perhaps Purdue. Notre Dame is kind of like it's played in Chicago. Maybe Notre Dame could beat them there. But they have a clean shot to beat Ohio State in the championship game. I think they're going to get there. I think they're going to lose one game. I'm just not sure where. I think it's going to be between September 25th when they play Notre Dame in Chicago and Halloween, October 30th, that weekend, when they play against Iowa. One of those games they'll probably lose because it's too many tough games in a row, but they don't have any really tough games on the road. In other words, they're not playing Ohio State on the road, and they're not playing Penn State on the road. You know, the Minnesota, playing at Minnesota, PJ Fleck is one of those coaches, the 41-year-old Minnesota Beavers coach, probably going to get talked about. He's like Matt Campbell from Iowa State. I talked about him a few weeks ago. I think Paul Chryst may get. Paul Chryst is up there. Again, he's better than Bielema. I think he may go farther than Alvarez. This may be the year Wisconsin gets to the playoff. But I think Ohio State beats them in that game. If I just found out today that Ohio State's quarterback was a redshirt. If he was a true freshman, I was going to pick Wisconsin to win that game. It's going to be a great Big Ten championship game. I'm going to pick Ohio State because they got just a little bit better talent. But it's a coin toss. It's definitely a coin toss, you know. And Iowa, what I like about Iowa is you know, they'll always beat a team at home that they're not supposed to. They got to play Minnesota at home this year. They got Penn State at home. I think they can knock out Penn State perhaps at home this year. This guy, Kirk Ferentz, TJ Hawkinson, Greg Kittle, always a good offensive line. Ranked 20th in the preseason, by the way, Iowa. Went 6-2 last year. You can't sleep on this team. You can never sleep on them. I think, Jimmy's and Joe's with the X's and O's, SEC is the best conference. We all know that. They get the most players. The Jimmy's and Joe's, most players get drafted from the SEC. But X's and O's, player development, I think the Big Ten's the best conference. And I didn't even talk about the Fitzgerald up in Pat Fitzgerald up in Northwestern. But Kirk Ferentz is one of those guys, always rumored to take an NFL job. Must be really happy up there. Been at Iowa for 23 years. I mean, he's comfortable, man. I think they're probably an 8-3, 8-4 type of team. They got to play at Iowa State, at Wisconsin, at Nebraska. I think Nebraska potentially upset them on a Friday night. But that leads me to Nebraska. Scott Frost guy, Adrian Martinez, this junior quarterback. Now, he's on the hot seat. This is a guy that was hired over from, I want to say, Central Florida or whatever. Has not lived up to the billing. Went to Nebraska. Supposed to be a superstar coach. They were 5-7 last year before last, 3-5 last year. Now, this could be a big bounce back year for him. I think the only way he saves his job, he needs to make ESPN. He needs to make the big headlines. They got Ohio State at home on November 6th. He needs to beat Ohio State. He needs to knock out Michigan on October 9th. They got to play at Oklahoma on the 18th. They're going to get slaughtered there. They got the 10th hardest schedule in the country. But my thing is, for him to stay, he needs a big upset, maybe 2. And they've got the firepower to do it. 10 defensive players, 7 on offense, including this junior quarterback. He's a dual threat. He might get drafted late in the NFL, undrafted guy. He's athletic enough, but they got to get some stops. But that's an interesting storyline to keep up with. Okay, PJ Fleck, 5th year Minnesota Beavers. Okay, this team was 11-2 in 2019. They beat Penn State. They got off to a good start against Wisconsin. They lost at the end there. 10, they got 20 out of 22 starters coming back, both sides of the ball. They got a junior quarterback. This guy, they could beat Ohio State in week 1. They got Ohio State on a Thursday night, 4 weeks from the night, Brian. They beat Ohio State. The other teams are going to start calling. Now, this guy, PJ Fleck, like a Matt Campbell, signed an extension. And the first few years of this extension, his buyout was like $10.8 million. It was way up there. And now it's down to 4.5, and it's going to go down each year. 3-2 in bowl games, 56. This guy, Minnesota, when recruiting, is just not, it's not going to be what it is here in the South or a name brand school. I got to give this guy credit. They're playing way over their head. But if they upset Ohio State in week 1 and, have a 9-win season, this is going to be that guy. This is going to be one of those commodities that gets called upon. PJ Fleck, possibly Paul Chryst, Brian. But Fleck, really, if you beat Ohio State with that kind of talent that Ohio State's bringing in right now, You know, uh, he's a coach to watch. Matt Campbell's my favorite from Iowa State. But, yeah, Pickles, you remember them. Jeff Braun at Purdue, kind of fallen off here lately. You know, they were 4-8, 19, 2-4. They knocked out Ohio State a few years back. Now, Brett Bielema, this is probably a better fit for him. Got off to a great start at Arkansas. And he didn't put the kind of – Brett Bielema was a former Wisconsin coach, for those you don't remember, and did really well there. Got a really good looking wife. She's on TV all the time, blonde-headed woman. He talk about out-kick your coverage, right? Arkansas hires him. And, you know, he gets off to a great start there. And his philosophy is, I'm going to get the biggest offensive lineman. We're just going to mow people down. We're going to run the ball. We're going to wear the opposition down. And it didn't quite sink into Brett that you have to recruit and recruit hard because there's so much speed on the other side. You got big guys playing defense for that are big and fast. He didn't quite understand that. And, of course, you know, he goes 4-8 his last year. The SEC just don't have a lot of patience for that. And playing in the SEC West when you're playing against Texas A&M, LSU, Alabama, and you're getting mopped like that, it just didn't go over well. So he was out of football. I think he was assistant coach somewhere and helped out. But now he's back with Illinois, who fired Lovie Smith, former Chicago Bear coach. Now he's back as a defensive coordinator with Houston. But Bielema, this is probably a good fit for him. You know, a little bit slower conference, more from what his tune is. He's an interesting character. I wouldn't put him as a PJ Fleck or a Paul Chryst type of coach, anything like that. But again, I think Ohio State beats Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship. Could go the other way. But the winner of the Big Ten, it will probably come down to, does the committee think that Clemson, after they play their games, schedule is stronger than Ohio State? The way things look right now, that answer will be no. Clemson, again, they open up against Georgia. I think Georgia wins that game. I like the quarterback edge, slight edge to Georgia. Could go the other way. Then Clemson's out home. Clemson's 77th ranked schedule. You know, maybe Florida State's better this year. Carolina's always has been good with their new coach there. Got used to coach for Texas. Mac Brown. Carolina may have the first round pick at quarterback next year. Mac Brown's doing really well. He's doing way better than I thought he would be at North Carolina. But they just don't have a tough schedule. Now, they're trying to get into the SEC, even though the presidents are denying that. I don't believe that. I think they are. Clemson and Florida State are trying to get into the SEC. But as of today, and I'll talk about the ACC next week in Clemson, not everybody, just the people I think is going to do something. But that will make their, strength of schedule much better. But right now, they don't play anybody. They have like one or two tough games, that they got to get up for. And then it's it. And compared to Alabama, that's like 5 or 6 games, But again, that's why I'm a fan of these major conferences coming in to their own now. With Oklahoma and Texas coming in. Oklahoma, I'm leaning on picking Oklahoma to win the whole thing. Phil's still saying their defense has progressively, and he's pointed out it's gotten about 3 points better, guys, every year since Lincoln Riley's taken over. Well, we know the offense is going to be there. I know this Spencer Rattler from Oklahoma is going to get called to New York. I don't know if he's going to win the Heisman, but them last 3 or 4 games, that 55 he put on Florida in the bowl game, that's going to be interesting. So, anyways, again, that's what I got for the Big Ten. We'll see. If I had to pick today, I'd pick Ohio State. Ohio State would play. It'll be Ohio State, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Alabama would be in my playoff. I don't think the Pac-12's got a strong enough team. I'll have to look and see what Oregon's doing with Cristobal. I don't think USC is going to do anything. I think Clay Helton will be probably get canned this year at USC. But we'll see. I have to look and study there. I'll get into that in the next week or so. I'm going to get into the NFL Tuesday, Pickles. Hard Knocks starts. I will be talking about Hard Knocks on Thursday's program of next week. And also on Netflix, the documentary about the Malice in the Palace. The Detroit Brawl with the Indiana Pacers back in, I think it was 2004. So I can't remember what day that was on, what year, but Netflix is advertising it. And the Malice in the Palace documentary, I'll give you my comments on that next Thursday. Okay? If you guys like the show, share the show. Please share the show. Share it on Twitter. Share it on, share my YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube, guys. Share it on Facebook. Subscribe. Like, subscribe, share. I appreciate it. If you want to contribute, go to the Zelle app. The word sports, word SKOPE at gmail.com. Okay? I will be on Thursday. Hold on, everybody. I hate to rush through this. Hold on. I will be on Sunday at 7:30 a.m. Central Time. I will be on Sunday, 7:30 a.m. Central Time, talking to Mac and Jack. We'll do This Week in Sports. I'm sure those guys out of New York City and the Northeast area, they didn't like me criticizing Joe Judge, this loose cannon that Joe Judge is, Brian. I don't know if you got a chance to watch my show the other day, that why are you letting your starting quarterback be at the bottom of a brawl when you're calling that practice? What if Daniel Jones tears an Achilles or an ACL? How smart does that make you look, Joe Judge? And I'm sure Mac and Jack, they're going to grill me on those comments. But the guy Joe Judge, the Giants coach, got into a fist fight. It wasn't a, this guy stands up over here and this guy stands up over there and the other coaches get between them. No, Mark Colombo, his offensive line coach, punched him in the face. He punched him back in the face. And the team advised Judge, this was November of last year, to fire him. They do not want grown men, 39-year-old, 35-year-old men fighting the coaches. You're supposed to be the guys that's supposed to set the temperament and set the tone for the team. Okay? And they're going to grill me on that. Mac thinks that's okay. No, it's not. You know, Buddy Ryan used to do that, and he's never won anything as a head coach. He was a great defensive coordinator, Buddy Ryan. Rex Ryan's dad, Mike Golick, talks about that. He said he would encourage us at Philadelphia to fight all the time. But the guy who did win the Super Bowl, Don Shula, said, no, I'll fine you for that. Because if you get hurt and I can't use you in the game, then I'm fired. Okay? So my thing is, if you coach like that, your teams are going to be up and down all year long. They're not going to have any control. They're going to get penalty crazy, even though they were decent last year. If it was me, they're not. I've looked at their schedule. I don't think they're going to make it this year in the playoffs. You fire the 70-year-old general manager, Dave Gettleman, because he brought in Joe Judge and he drafted Daniel Jones. And then, of course, you get your new general manager to pick his own head coach. And then you find a way to trade or get rid of Daniel Jones, and you start over from there. They've got some pieces. I don't want to be a total giant killer. They've got pieces, but it's just unprofessional. I understand that there are coaches and players who are great who come up to that line. Tom Brady went off on some players, snapped at coaches. For instance, at the Chicago Bear game last year, kind of snapped at his offensive line. He ended up forgetting it was fourth down, by the way. A couple years before that, he snapped at Josh McDaniels. But he kept it. He walked up to the line, okay? Nick Saban, when he was in Miami, some players were separated for almost punching him. He got close to that line. What Joe Judge is doing is what Bob Knight done, is what Woody Hayes back in the 70s done when he punched that 1978 Pickles, that player from Clemson. He's a line crosser. Remember what Charlie Murphy said about Rick James? He's a habitual. I think Joe Judge is a line crosser. So I just don't. That's why I don't think he's going to last. They're probably going to drill me on that. So tune in to that show, Max Sports, the Northeast streaming. You can find it on YouTube Sunday. And then after me, former Dallas Cowboy. This is what circles I'm in now. I'm moving on up to the east side. Jim Jeffcoat, former Dallas Cowboy, who won one of those 2 Super Bowl rings with Jimmy Johnson. He comes on after me on their show, 7:30. He'll be on there 8 a.m. Central Time. So watch that show, guys. Next week, I'll talk a little bit about the ACC. I may talk a little bit about the Pac-12 because I want to get into the NFL, start breaking down NFL more. That's what I do my show around mainly is the NFL. It's a year-round sport. A lot to talk about. I'm talking about that Malice in the Palace there documentary on Netflix. And I'm going to talk about, obviously, the most valuable team in sports, the Dallas Cowboys. They'll be on Hard Knocks next week. So can't wait, guys. Have a good night, everybody. I will see you otherwise around maybe 10 minutes before. Try to get on early, 9 p.m. Central Time, Tuesday here on Sports Scope. Thanks, guys.